To what extent is the theory of collaborative and participatory design, as it is taught in the Honours Architecture program at the University of Pretoria, applicable to the real-world context of Alaska, a South African informal settlement? Let us briefly unpack this statement. We as students of architecture within the institution of the University of Pretoria have been equipped with a scope of knowledge that should allow us to address issues with design-related outcomes. Within the academic institution, design is thought of and taught in many different ways. Artistic, participatory, institutional, and pragmatic broadly outline 4 paradigms of design within our institution. We consider participatory as a well-suited design toolkit, considering the specific informal context and focus of coursework. Within participation, there are further theoretical standpoints, loosely described as partial participation, transformative participation, and full participation. Based on the works of Nabil Hamdi as the primary resource of the Honours Year program, we consider transformative participation to best engage with the given context. On the other side, the community, the context in which design must fall, contains a knowledge base that impacts design significantly. The social structure, how design inputs or interference may be received. Context, an understanding of place, of culture or religion. Tacit knowledge, as displayed in the vernacular of tangible or intangible. And networks, where the design and design process must fit within, such as understanding leadership structure, economic dependencies, and the connection of sites to the greater urban networks. It is at this point where the 2 knowledge bases meet, both coming in with a different set of skills. How then can we begin to connect, integrate, and mediate these 2 knowledge bases to generate design, process, and outcome? The investigation is then towards a methodology that best encompasses these knowledges into a design. Alaska is situated east of Pretoria in the Gauteng province of South Africa. The informal settlement stretches in a linear fashion along the mountainside, constrained by formal development on the one side and steep topography on the other. Our chosen site to investigate is at the end of the formal road, at the cul-de-sac. Our initial site exploration method was to immerse ourselves in the context and become familiar to the people. Although equipped with introductory games, as literature suggested, we quickly found it was more effective to connect on a social level, being friendly and interested in the everyday doings of the people we met. Through this process, we were introduced to many key role players, one being the community leader, Skumba. The importance of working through existing networks is highlighted by Hamdi. Skumba had many ideas and could encourage a meaningful dialogue with regards to small change community upgrade. He was able to generate excitement about the project, and we felt for the first time that our experiment may indeed become a product that assists the end user. We had immersed ourselves fairly significantly in both theory and community. However, we were unable to determine through role players within the community what we could potentially build. We found that no one really knew, or had not given it any thought, to what small upgrade could create much benefit. The dialogue constantly returned to the need for water and electricity. To continue our research, we suggested a program, developed around a much-used tap. The tap was identified by us as students based off the expert knowledge taught within academia to assess and highlight key potentials of a site. The single tap point is used by more than 15 households and a couple of businesses, including a taxi vehicle wash. The hope was to create ownership of the upgrade towards the taxi wash members, enabling the facility for taxi business. This, coupled with the upgrading of the area towards a social space and expanded function of the tap, such as washing space. As soon as a tangible outcome was defined, the dialogue became extremely engaging. The role players were able to give significant input into what should happen, and debates between members became good design informants. Discussion with a model and walking through the site with gestures of space were the most effective communication tools. Inspired by the hashtag #FeesMustFall campaign, we were also curious to test the extent of participation using technology, such as social media. This would potentially expand key role players indefinitely, meaning that the location was not a prerequisite to participation. Could this potentially strengthen the coming together of the knowledge bases? Social media produced two major outcomes, one of crowdsourced funding, and the other of on-site participation of the general public. Through funds donated, we sourced local building materials as well as having materials donated by corporate companies. Throughout the building process, the design changed significantly based on material, key role player inputs at the time, skills necessary to build the design, and so on. It then became clear that the greatest co-design tool we had was the unstructured building process within the moment decisions. The Alaska Builds project contained many unknowns that made for a dynamic design approach. There is no single client, no predetermined outcome, no planning regulations, undetermined building labor, no known construction skills, and unknown materials. The design changed as these unknowns presented themselves. For example, a bricklayer came to assist us, so brick became a more viable material choice. The counter where washing would occur was also a much contested decision. The basins acquired, we were told, were not adequate for washing clothes, and the counter height with basins would be too high to place a washing bucket on, in which case the existing tap and ground may be a better design regarding its function. The process was heavily weighted by the availability of materials. Concrete slab was not an option until we were donated enough material to do so. Interestingly, often key role players only made their constraints of design heard once the building had commenced. As an example, we had built a gabion wall in an attempt to reach an aesthetic and use the rocks as free material, but once built, a key role player, who assisted in construction, asked if we could plaster over the whole thing because instead of making a good wall, we had made a habitat for snakes. The building process lasted 4 weeks, and this is some documentation of that process. So then, to what extent is the theory of participatory and collaborative design applicable to Alaska, the South African informal settlement? If we reflect on the argument outlined, what we discovered is that expert knowledge suitably adapts itself to be more engaged with tacit knowledge. We found our initial bias towards expert knowledge became weighted far more by the on-site tacit experiences. We were able to engage on a tacit level, informed by expert knowledge, because this is the common ground of both knowledge bases. It is apparent that, for expert knowledge to engage on a tacit level is more easily achieved than for tacit knowledge to engage at the level of expert knowledge. The theories tested are extremely dependent on the specific context in which they are applied. We found, as opposed to significantly testing the tools provided by the theories, we were rather testing the willingness of the context to engage with these tools. In this regard, the many potential methodologies for application of collaborative theory allows a strong adaptation of method to become best suited to the context in which collaboration may be applied. In other words, the strength of participation theory in the given context was its loosely outlined application, allowing for the method of how it is applied to be defined by the context. In this project, the dependency of tacit knowledge is clear. The balances of knowledge as applied is weighted towards the tacit. However, that tacit knowledge base is far more critical to design than initially presumed. To place expert knowledge within a tacit framework appears to be the strength of the theories of participatory and collaborative design. There is a separation of tacit and expert knowledge bases. However, the theory allows us to begin to merge these two. In retrospect, our methodology became that which significantly engages with tacit knowledge through social interaction, dialogue, and observation. In comparison, this approach is in line and engages with much of what Nabil Hamdi suggests with regard to participatory and collaborative design.